I was headlining a show in Chicago, Illinois, and it was at the Regal Theater. And in those days, that's what we did, theaters. There were no big jobs like there are now. We would work from 9 a.m. in the morning until 12 midnight. And these little kids were doing the same thing. So, as I walked in at the half meaning a half an hour before it was time for us to go on. And it was a time when only the headliners did more than 2 songs. Because we do a complete show, then a movie, cartoon, and then a show, movie, cartoon, and it kept on all day, 10 straight days. So, one of the Shy-Lights, the leader of the Shy-Lights, Marshall Thompson, Marshall asked me to go and look at this kid that was on stage at the time I walked in. And I went up there, and that was this little bitty guy about like that. And he was spinning around like James Brown. Ooh, hey, ooh. I said, dang. I said, send him up to the dressing room. He stayed with me 10 straight days. He never left me except when he was on stage or when I was on stage. During the interim, he would go to sleep in my lap. His brother Marlon would go to sleep in my partner Tommy Chong's lap. You know, Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. And I asked him at the end, how'd you like to go to Motown? He said, you don't mean it. What do you mean? He said, well, you know, Gladys Knight said she was going to do that. And I said, she did. I said, where did she see you? She said, well, we went on the, what's his name? Frost. It was David Frost show. And David Frost, you know, is the guy from England. And we went on that show because we won a talent contest in Gary, Indiana. And he says, and we went on the show, and we met Gladys Knight on that show. And she said, you boys are good. I'm going to get you to Motown. He said, and we ain't never heard from her again. I said, okay, tell you what. You want to go with Motown? I said, I'll take you there and I'll get you signed. And that's how it started. I took him, his father, the guy, Jack, who was more of his father than Joseph was, and the rest of the kids. And a couple of kids you never hear about, Ronnie Rancifer and Johnny Jackson. They were the piano player and the drummer. Nobody ever talks about them, but I do because they were a part of that. And they should get that credit. So I took them and called Berry Gordy up when I got to Detroit. I had them all staying in my 1-bedroom apartment. And that was right before I got my house. Right? And you're talking about some hungry children. But Michael was a workaholic. And I liked the way he wanted to work. And that inspired me. So the next thing you know, they're signed, sealed, and delivered. I produced their first 7 albums. First 7 albums, I think. Yeah. But I produced and co-produced the first 6 hits. ABC, I Want You Back, I'll Be There, Maybe Tomorrow, and Going Back to Indiana. Those were my things. And Michael was coming to Chiang Mai, Thailand, because he says, Bobby, we haven't done nothing in a long time. He says, I'm old now. He says, and I need you to do me another song like we used to do. So I did a song called Keep a Light I put my voice on it the morning he died. That afternoon he died. It was morning for me though. It was like 3:00 a.m. when I heard the news. Right? And you know where I heard the news from? Right where we're talking. I heard the news from Macau. When Michael passed, I heard it from here. My friend called me from here. She told me, she says, Bobby, wake up and then try and go back to sleep. You lost Michael today. That's what she told me. And I walked into the studio that morning. I sang this song with everything that was in me. It's called Keep a Light. So I keep a light in my window. I want to. The greatest entertainer that ever stepped on a stage. There is none that can compare to him. There's none. You had, in Michael Jackson, you had Sammy Davis Jr., Fred Astaire, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett, and Bobby Taylor. That's what you had. The greatest has ever stepped on any one stage in any world. I don't care where you look. Well, I helped make that talent vocally, as did Fred Astaire help make him as a dancer. So before I had a little trouble with some of the policemen in Beijing, where I lived for 8.5 years, I had a search going on for the Chinese Michael Jackson. And they have so much talent in China. It's going to scare the world. One of these days you're going to hear about them. One of these days, I'm telling you. You must look out for these young people from China. I'm learning now, because I've only been in Hong Kong for a couple of years, that you got that talent all over China. It's not just mainland China. It's China, period. First of all, get an education. That's the first thing, get an education. Second, try and do anything but music. It'll break your heart, right? But if it's in you, then you must starve. You must starve yourself. You must be the worst person to anyone else but yourself in order to make this. You have to dig a hole and put yourself in it if you want to be great. And what I mean by that is, Michael Jackson at 8 years old, he and I worked 20 hours a day. You name a child that can be attentive and soak in stuff at 8 years old for 20 hours a day. Michael took me to the limit. He was a workaholic. So when people see these videos of him right before he died, that was nothing. But I do know that Michael could not sleep. He would call me 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Bobby, you awake? I said, I answered the phone, fool. I talked to him any way I wanted to. And then I'd hear this back. You still crazy. He said, why you call me a fool? I said, you called me and asked me if I was still awake. I answered the phone. Am I awake or was I asleep when I answered the phone? And he'd start laughing. He'd laugh maybe for 10 minutes. And he couldn't do nothing else but laugh. And I said, what are you doing, boy? How are you doing? I said, who loves you? That was our thing. Michael, I started that with Michael. I said, Michael, who loves you? You do. I said, don't you ever forget it. I said, if you do, I'll kill you. I used to tell him that. He'd love it. If I didn't tell him I'd kill him, it would like break his heart. You mad at me? I said, for what? I ain't mad at you. He ain't say the words. I said, okay, Michael, I'll kill your ass. That's all I had to do. He said, you don't have to cuss, though. Michael didn't curse. You know, and let me say this. They say that Michael used to take drugs. That's a lie. Any drugs that was given to him by a doctor, and there ain't no way in hell that that young man took anyone's drugs. When they say he took drugs, that makes people think that he'd go on the corner or go looking for, you know, heroin or cocaine. This kid didn't do that. So these so-called doctors, they're the culprits because they got that money. And every time they gave him something, they got paid. To every one of those doctors, can I look at the camera? To every doctor out there who gave him something, you the culprits, not Mikey. And another thing, Michael Jackson was no pedophile. Don't ever put that in nobody's lips. I knew him better than his father. The only one I didn't know him better than was his mother. And he's supposed to be because I taught him. Watch me. I don't take no stuff from my boys. These kids that work with me right now, I'm so hard on them. And man, give us a break. I say, I'll break you. You're fired. Now, how you like that? I'll tell them, you want to make it in this business, then it's got to be hardline. It's called tough love. If you really love somebody, like my kids in America, they will stop you from spanking your kids. They will stop you from disciplining your kids. And then the next thing you know, your kids out there selling dope on the streets, right? When I came up, I got beat with a bullwhip. I ain't never been to prison. Don't think that I have never done anything. I've done a lot of bad things, but I ain't never been to prison. My parents scared me out of that. You know? And guess what? To this day, I don't have a mark on me. For whatever they beat me with, spanked me with, I didn't go crying to the teacher. My mother and my father hit me. So what? You deserved it, and I know you did. To go back to writing songs about beautiful women, your girlfriend that broke your heart, make something out of those things that hurt you, and make something out of those things that make you happy. And that's what the music that I love did for me.